Second.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we can get started. We got about 30 more seconds, 20 more seconds. So good evening, everyone. My name is Danica Walker, and I'm one of the Pinellas Access to Higher Education counselors with the University of South Florida St. Petersburg campus. I'm your host for this evening. So today we'll be talking about financial aid, a little bit about FAFSA, and where you can find scholarship information. So our first guest for the evening will be Mr. Will Scott from St. Petersburg campus. As I mentioned before, this workshop is being recorded, so you will have access to it. We'll send out an email sometime after the workshop with any links that are discussed or any resources that are discussed, so you'll be able to reference it back. But for today's topic, I just want to make sure that you understood that we'll have a presentation, and then following each presentation, there will be a portion where you can ask questions. During that time, and while we're going through the presentation, please don't hesitate to put questions in the chat as they arise. But specifically during our Q&A question time, you are also able to unmute yourself and ask those questions verbally if you would like. So please ask all the questions that you have. We want to make sure that your questions are answered in today's workshop. So I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Will Scott.
Great, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Will Scott. I work in the financial aid department at St. Petersburg College. So just give me 1 second while I get my presentation pulled up. Hopefully it all works smoothly. Let's see. All right. Can you see the presentation right now? Is it filling the screen?
Yes, it's showing.
All right, fantastic. So quite a few topics I want to cover this evening, but please, after each slide, I'll ask if you have any questions, and I'll ask at the end if you have questions. But please, as we go along, if you have questions, throw those at me, because I know if you don't, and we get to the end and you try to remember what you want to ask me, you're probably going to have forgotten. And chances are there's going to be a lot of questions, so I hope it will be. So what we're going to be covering this evening, first of all, is going to be the actual application process for financial aid. Then we'll talk about a process called verification. And then I'm going to talk about all the different types of financial aid that there are, which basically there are 4 types. There are grants, there are scholarships, there's federal work study, and there are federal student loans. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail into scholarships. I'm going to talk a little bit about SPC scholarships, but then we have somebody else that's going to be talking after me who's going to be going into a lot more detail about scholarships. So the first thing is the actual application process. Now, the main form that you have to complete to determine exactly what you're eligible for financial aid is the FAFSA form, the free application for federal student aid. There is only one website that you should go to complete this form, and that is FAFSA.gov, as you see on my website, or as you see on this slide. There are many other websites that you can go to complete this application, but these other sites are going to charge you almost $100 to complete this application. I mean, nothing frustrates me more than when I have students or parents come into my office and they say they paid $88 to fill out this application, when in its very title it says the free application for federal student aid. So please, please, please do not make that mistake. Do not pay somebody to help you complete this application. The government website is pretty straightforward. It gives you a lot of hints and tips as you go along. But if you do need help, if you're struggling to fill out the FAFSA, don't be embarrassed. Come to one of our campuses, SBC, USF is probably the same. Go to their campuses as well, and we or they will be more than happy in the financial aid department to help you to complete the FAFSA. Now, the great thing about the FAFSA is it does determine your eligibility for federal, state, and institutional aid. Just one application you need to complete to determine all those different things. It's going to determine your eligibility for grants, and it's going to determine your eligibility for federal student loans. Some scholarships do use the score on the FAFSA to determine eligibility, but most scholarships have their own criteria. Now, before you actually start to complete filling out the FAFSA, the first thing you need to do is you need to create a username and a password. Now, that username and password is called an FSA ID. And again, the website you go to complete that is right here on this slide, fsaid.ed.gov. Now, both the student will need to create a username password, and probably the parents will also need to create a username and password. So in very simple terms, the way it works, student creates username password, parent creates username password, then student goes onto the FAFSA website, fafsa.gov, logs in with their username and password, fills out all their information, then it's going to ask for parents' information, parents will put their information, and then on the very last page, it's going to have the student sign using their username password, and that's where the parent's username password comes into effect. The only other reason that the parent needs that username and password is when you are filling out the FAFSA, it does give you the option to link directly to the IRS. It has a tool on there called the IRS retrieval tool that I do recommend you use, because if you use that tool, it simplifies, first of all, filling out the FAFSA. And secondly, if you get chosen for a process called verification, it simplifies that process as well. Now, before I go in any more detail on the FAFSA, does anyone have any questions on anything I've said so far? If not, I will keep on moving.
No questions in the chat yet.
No questions yet? Excellent. So now I mentioned that chances are the student needs to create a username password and the parent needs to create a username password. So there are two types of students. There are students that are considered dependent students, and there are students that are considered independent students. So on the FAFSA, there are basically 13 questions that determine your eligibility, whether you are considered dependent or independent. A dependent student will have to put parental information on the FAFSA, and therefore the parent will need a username password as well. Those questions are, you have to be 24. It'll say basically, are you 24? Are you married? Do you have children? Do you take care of anyone else other than children? Are both of your parents deceased? Were you in foster care after the age of 13? Are you an emancipated minor? What other questions are there? Are you a military veteran? Are you currently in the armed forces? Are you working on a master's degree, or are you homeless? Those are basically the questions it's going to ask you. So for most people, it's a case of, are you 24? Are you married, or do you have children? Most of the other cases are more unique. If you're not able to answer yes to any of those questions, then you are going to need to put parental information on the FAFSA. Oftentimes we'll have students and parents, or students primarily, come into the office and go, well, I don't live with my parents live in another state, my parents live in another country, or even, I live on my own, I pay my own bills, my parents don't help me financially in any way. Unfortunately, none of those are grounds to make a student independent. Just because you pay your own bills, just because you live in your own house, just because your parents live in other states, those are not grounds to make you an independent student. Now, occasionally, students are unable to answer yes to one of those questions that I mentioned before, the 24, married, children, parents deceased questions. However, they are unable to get parents to complete the FAFSA because of either it's an abusive situation with the parents, or it's an abandonment. Students just have absolutely no idea where parents are. Maybe parents are incarcerated. So there are a few unique situations where even though the student is unable to answer yes to one of the questions that would make them independent, if you fall under something like that, these more unique circumstances, abuse, abandonment, or incarceration of parents, then certainly what you'd want to do is still fill out the FAFSA your best you can, get it submitted, and then you'd want to reach out to the financial aid department at the school you're planning on attending to discuss what is called a dependency override. And then your financial aid counselor at the school you're planning on attending would discuss with you what types of paperwork you could provide to prove your very unique circumstance. Now, I know something like a dependency override, if anyone on this call maybe has one of those circumstances, you probably don't want to talk about that with a group like this. But at the end of this presentation, I will be providing my contact information, my email address, and my telephone number. So if you do want to discuss a more unique and personal situation, you're more than welcome to give me a call or email me, and we can discuss that one-on-one rather than with everybody that's on the call. Two other things to talk about are the two FAFSAs that are currently available. So right now, if you go on the FAFSA website, you will see it will default to the 2022-2023 FAFSA, and the 2022-2023 FAFSA comes into effect in the fall. So if you're not planning on starting college until the fall, that's the FAFSA you'd want to do. That FAFSA has been out now since October the 1st of last year, and it's based on your 2020 tax information. There is another FAFSA on the website. There is the 2021-2022 FAFSA available, which is what students are currently using to determine their eligibility and have been using since fall last year, and we're still using it right now for the spring term and the summer term. That FAFSA uses 2019 income information. Now, if you are planning on starting college in the summer, you're going to want to do the 2021-2022 FAFSA as well as the 2022-2023 FAFSA. I know that's a mouthful I just said, but any questions before I move on to the next slide? Nope.
Nope, no questions.
Alrighty. So once you submit the FAFSA, one of the questions on the FAFSA is what schools are you interested in attending, and you can list up to 10 schools, so it'll get sent to those 10 schools. And if anyone is interested, SBC school code is 001528. I don't know why I don't have this on that on this slide, but 001528. When you put that on the FAFSA, it will come up with SBC with a Largo address, and that's okay. Largo is where our district office is. It doesn't matter whether you're planning on going to our Gibbs campus, our Seminole, our Clearwater, our Tarpon, our All States, or it doesn't matter which SBC campus you're going to, it's still the 001528. But once you do submit, I don't know if somebody would like to say the USF school code. I don't know off the top of my head, but if somebody wants to mention the USF school code, if somebody on the call knows it. I don't. If not,
I'm sorry, William, we don't.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I can look that up and I can put it in chat a little bit later. So once you do submit the FAFSA, 3 days later, whichever schools you listed on the FAFSA, the schools will receive it. Now, once the schools receive it, oops, I'm kind of jumping a slide here. Let me go back. So actually, some other information that's important to be aware of what you're going to need when you are filling out the FAFSA. First thing you would need would be, as a student, you're going to need your social security number. And now it is only the student that needs a social security number. If your parents don't have a social security number, that's okay. Parents that are not citizens, what they would simply put is they would put all zeros on the FAFSA for the social security number. Now, if your parents don't have a social security number, they're not going to be able to create that username password I mentioned before. So if that were their case, then what would happen is when you come to the last page and parents are trying to sign the FAFSA, they would just have to print off a signature page and then mail it into FAFSA headquarters, which is up in Kentucky, is where that would get sent to. But that's okay. It's only the student that needs to have a social security number. Now, to be eligible for financial aid, you do need to be, as in the student, you do need to be either a US citizen or an eligible non-citizen. Eligible non-citizen is typically somebody who has a green card. What information do you need as far as income information when you're completing the FAFSA? The main thing you're going to need is going to be your income tax returns, and those income tax returns are going to depend on which FAFSA you're doing. As I mentioned on the prior slide, if you're looking at starting school in the fall and you're doing the 2022-2023 FAFSA, that's going to be your 2020 taxes. If you're starting in the summer and you're doing the 2021-2022 FAFSA, that's going to be your 2019 income information. And something you've probably already picked up on already is that's rather historic data. Why is it asking us about income information from 2019 or 2020? We're already in 2022. Well, that's something else that your school can work with you on. Although when you are originally completing the FAFSA, yes, you do have to complete it based on the base year, which is the year it's asking for. However, after you have completed and submitted the FAFSA, if 2019 income information or 2020 income information is not a realistic representation of your current financial situation, and for many people it's not because of COVID, therefore you can reach out to the school and go, hey, I didn't make nearly as much in 2021. Can we look at doing what is called a professional judgment, a change in circumstance, to use my 2021 income information instead of the 2019 or the 2020? And that's something that is very popular right now, and we're doing a lot more this year and last year than we ever had before, obviously because of COVID. Other information that you may need when you're filling out the FAFSA would be W-2s, also untaxed information you may need such as private disability, workman's comp, that type of thing, it is important to be aware that untaxed Social Security disability is not included anywhere on the FAFSA. However, private disability is included on the FAFSA. Also, VA disability is included on the FAFSA, but untaxed regular SSI, SSDI, that is not included. If you have a portion of your SSI or SSDI that is taxed, then it's going to be part of your tax return. It's going to be included on the FAFSA. Now, another common mistake students and parents make when they're filling out the FAFSA is when it comes to asset questions. There are 3 asset questions it asks. It asks, 1, how much you currently have in the bank, checking and savings accounts. 2, how much you have in investments. And 3, if you own a business, the net worth of the business. So that first asset question is pretty straightforward. What do you have in the bank? So you just put what you have in the bank. The second one, investments, is commonly students and parents make a mistake on, because that question, you don't need to include retirement instruments. So if you've got funds in a 401k or a 403b or a IRA, those do not need to be included by way of investments. If, however, you have a portfolio of stocks and bonds that is not in a retirement instrument, that would need to be included on the FAFSA. Likewise, when it comes to property, if you own the house you live in, that, whatever you net worth of that house you live in, that does not need to be included on the FAFSA. But if you have extra houses, if you have rental properties, if you have vacation homes, then the net worth of those houses do need to be included under investments. And then when it comes to a business, most people's businesses are below the threshold as far as the question asks, do you have a business that has more than 100 employees? If you have a business, a lot of people have side hustles and they're then trying to figure out, well, I do an Uber thing, or I have a small haircutting business or a babysitting business. Do I need to figure out what the net worth of that business is? No, you do not, unless those businesses employ more than 100 people. So for most businesses, you do not need to include the net worth of the business on the FAFSA. Now, who are you including as far as information on? Who is considered parent? I'll talk about first. So a common mistake is a student thinks, okay, I need to put my mum and dad on the FAFSA. My mum and dad are divorced, but I'm going to include mum's information and dad's information. What you do if you have divorced parents is you're simply going to go, okay, which parent do I spend most of the time with? Which parent do I live with? And then you're going to be including that parent's income information. And if that parent has now remarried, it's also going to be including that step parent's information as well. Doesn't matter if they just married yesterday. If you are filling out the FAFSA today and your mum, that is the person you decided to include on the FAFSA, just married some new person, your stepdad yesterday, that is who you are going to include on the FAFSA, mum and stepdad. Or if you include dad and dad hasn't remarried, then it's just dad that you include on the FAFSA. I'm not going to go into more detail on that unless people have questions about that. Likewise, when it comes to spouse, if you just got married yesterday, then it's going to be asking you about you and your spouse's income information, and it's going back to 2019 or 2020. And that's where the confusion often comes if you've recently got married. So the household size is you and your new spouse, or you and your mum's new husband, but it's looking at what did they make back in 2019 or 2020, and that's where the tricky part comes, because you're like, well, they weren't married back then. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter. You're married now, so what did you and what did they make in 2019 or 2020? So I suspect there might be some questions on some of that stuff I just covered. Any questions before I move on to what happens once you submit the FAFSA?
I think everybody's just digesting what
No
you
problem.
just said.
No worries. It is a lot.
Yeah,
of
I don't see questions relating to that yet, but that's a great example, because if you're asking for tax returns from 2 years ago, one wouldn't ordinarily think you have to add that person. So that was great.
Something that you recently married or parents recently married, right? And it's a common mistake that people make on the FAFSA. So when it is asking about parents' marital status, you may think as the student, well, my parents, my mum and dad, they're divorced. But if mum has now remarried or if dad has now remarried, and that's the parent you're using on the FAFSA, don't put your parents are divorced, put parents are married, because you're going to be including whoever that new step parent is on the FAFSA. But bottom line, if you need help with any of this, as I've said it before and I'll say it again, if you need help and you can't figure it out, reach out to me and I can advise you on exactly who you should be including and what income information you should be including on the FAFSA. That's not a problem. Now, once you do submit that FAFSA and whichever schools you listed, 3 days later, I got jumped ahead a minute ago, 3 days later, the schools are going to receive your FAFSA application. To them, they're going to be calling it an ISA, an institutional student information report, and you're going to receive an email, which is with a thing called a SAR, a student aid report. It's all names, but basically it's just your FAFSA. We like to use complicated acronyms just to make us seem like we're smart. We're not. We just try to make things as complicated as humanly possible, or the Department of Education does actually. Now, if you get chosen for this process called verification, do not freak out. A lot of people feel like we're asking for their tax documents and they feel like it's an IRS audit. 30% of all FAFSAs that are submitted are chosen for this process, so don't freak out. A lot of people make mistakes when they're filling out the FAFSA. Clearly, we just discussed several common mistakes that students and parents make. It can be a tricky form. So if you get chosen for this process, your school is going to reach out to you and ask for you to furnish certain documents, your tax returns, your W-2s, proof of when you got married, different things we're going to ask for. All you need to do is just bring those things into the school or submit them electronically through the website. And then if you made a mistake on the FAFSA, no one's getting in trouble. We're just going to fix the FAFSA based on what probably should have been on there. And then we send a correction to FAFSA. We get the correction back a few days later. And then based on that, we then award financial aid. But bottom line, if you get chosen, no big deal. We fix the problems, is all that happens. But again, this is why it's so important you fill out the FAFSA as early as possible. You know, I mentioned to you that the 22-23 FAFSA has been available since October the 1st, even though it doesn't come into effect until fall of this year. But there's two reasons why it's advantageous to fill it out as early as possible. One is, in case you get chosen for verification, and maybe there's a couple of corrections and additional documents you need to supply. So that's why you don't want to be submitting the FAFSA just a few weeks or even a few months before term starts. But the other really big reason why you want to submit the FAFSA as early as possible is to do with the grants that are available. Now, when it comes to grants, the main grant, which you've probably all heard of, is the Pell Grant. If you are Pell Grant eligible, you will get the Pell Grant, whether you fill out the FAFSA on October the 1st or whether you fill out the FAFSA the day before classes start. Because in the history of the Pell Grant, it has been fully funded. There has always been enough money allocated by Congress to pay all eligible students. But that's the Pell Grant. There are, however, many other grants available. There are the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, Florida Student Assistance Grant, First Generation Matching Grant, Student Incentive Grant, to name a few. All of those grants, however, are definitely not fully funded. We don't have nearly enough money to pay all the students that are eligible for all of those additional grants. So the only fair way we award them is we determine all the students that are eligible first, and then we simply go back and look and go, who filled out the FAFSA for October the 1st, October the 2nd, and we move forward until we have exhausted all of those funds. That's what we do at SBC. I know that's what they do at USF, and chances are they do it at Harvard and Yale and every other college when it comes to those types of grants. Now, the great thing is, to receive those grants, the only form you need to complete is the FAFSA. So get that FAFSA done, the 22-23 FAFSA. If you haven't done it yet, do it tonight or do it this weekend. At least that way you've done it in January. It'll still be considered relatively early in the grand scheme of things, because there will still be people, especially at SBC, coming in and doing the FAFSA the week before we start classes in August.
Can I
ahead.
interrupt you, William? Please. Leads to a question that was posted. Miriam asks, if my son is applying for USF for the summer of 2023, when should he apply for the FAFSA?
Of summer of 2023. So that one, right now, yes. Because the summer of 2023 will be using the 22-23 FAFSA, which has been available since October. So yeah, That's the one, because the summer term is the last term that FAFSA will be being used. And again, I know it seems like a long, long time away, but still that 22-23 FAFSA is already available. So that one he definitely wants to do. The 23-24 FAFSA, which will come into effect fall of that year, will be available October the 1st of this year. But yeah, the one for summer of next year is available already. So get it done this weekend. Get it done right now. Start working on it now. Listen to me, and after we're finished, then get it done. Great question. Any other questions on grants?
That's the only one that's been posted so far.
Okay. Now, when it does come to grants are basically looking at your score on your FAFSA. When you complete the FAFSA, it gives you what is currently called an EFC, an expected family contribution. They are changing that. It's going to come up with a new acronym for that next year. I can't remember what the new name for it is. But basically, it's just a scoring system. But bottom line, if your EFC, if your score on the FAFSA is over 6,000, then you're over the Pell Grant eligibility. If you're over 7,500, then you're outside of all of the other grants as well. So grants, though, are based on your income and the number of people in the household. I know the FAFSA is about 80 questions long, but really it comes down to those two questions: adjusted gross income, number of people in the house. Those are the strongest point scoring questions on the FAFSA. So that's grants, definitely best bang from your buck from grants. As I said, I'm not going to go into too much detail on scholarships because we've got Brooke who's going to come and talk after me about scholarships. But I do want to let you know, certainly on the SPC website, and just USF is going to have a similar thing on their website where they're going to have a great resources for scholarships. On our website, we talk about Bright Futures. Your best bang for your buck at SPC is SPC Foundation scholarships. And the reason I say it's your best bang for your buck is it's one application, applies for many different scholarships, and only SPC students can apply. If anyone on the call is planning on starting at SPC in the summer of this year, summer 2022, then I would definitely recommend checking out our website right now, because the SPC Foundation scholarship window for the summer this year is open right now. It's only open from January the 17th to February the 16th. So it's only open for a very short window, but a lot of scholarship availability right there. Also on our website, we have some other great institutional scholarships that students can apply for whilst they're still in high school, like SPC's Presidential Scholarship and Johnny Ruth Clark Scholarship. And then we have a whole list of private donor scholarships. And on our website, we do have some very generic search engines, scholarship search engines like scholarships.com and fastweb.com. I'm not a huge proponent of those. I honestly feel like they're only half a step above going on Google and typing in scholarships for blonde-haired students that live in Pinellas County. And if you do choose to use some of those generic search engines like FastWeb or scholarship.com, just be careful. There's a lot of scams on there. Definitely create an entirely separate email account for them, because you're going to get a bunch of spam email. Scholarships never need your social. You never need to pay for them. They don't need a credit card number or bank information. Scholarships, they're going to send them to the school. So just be careful if you use some of those generic search engines. If you're searching on the sites that Brooke mentions, if you're searching on SPC's website or USF's website, the ones that we're, SPC Foundation or our institutional ones, then you're safe. But I don't really want you to ask me questions about scholarships, because I don't want to take any questions away from Brooke's section, unless it's very SPC specific that you're going to want to ask about.
No, nothing posted at this point.
No problem. I don't want to steal all of Brooke's thunder. All right, so that's definitely your best bang for your buck. The only other thing I'm going to talk about with scholarships before I move on, though, is apply. Because the most common mistake that students make is they fill out the FAFSA, they get grants, the grants they receive are more than enough to cover the cost of their education, and they don't bother to apply for scholarships. Just to give you an example, the cost to come to SPC, 12 credits, full-time credit load, in-state tuition, plus books for a semester, about $2,000. The maximum Pell Grant a student can get for one semester, $3,000. If you also got state grant, another $1,000. So many students, maybe they get $4,000 in grants. Their tuition, books, and fees for the semester cost $2,000. So a month into the semester, when the grants come in, student gets a $2,000 refund, so the student is as happy as Riley. But he's still leaving a lot of money on the table because that same student, the maximum amount of aid they could have got for one semester is $10,000. So they could have got an additional $6,000 in scholarships to help with living expenses. Or if the student's lucky enough to be still living at home, to save that money so that down the road, when they do go on to the more expensive college, or when they go on to get their master's degrees, because when you go on to get a master's degree, there are very few and far between grants and scholarships. So most people that are going on for their master's degrees are having to pay for those through loans, or if you're fortunate enough by that stage, as you've got a bachelor's under your belt, maybe you've got a job and the company you're working for is giving you some kind of tuition reimbursement. But I really try to encourage students, whilst you're doing your undergraduate degrees, whilst there is so much grants and scholarships available, get as much as you can, save as much as you can. So when you go on for those master's degrees, you've got some money saved aside so you're not having to pay out of pocket. Because even the most reasonable master's degree, and USF has a couple of pretty reasonable ones, are going to cost you between $20,000 to $30,000. And as I say, not really no grants and scholarships at that point. So save what you can at the undergraduate. When I say undergraduate, I'm talking associates and bachelor's degrees. Now, moving on from grants and scholarships, the next thing I do recommend to students to do is apply for the federal work-study program. I am a huge proponent of the federal work-study program as well for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is many students, whilst they're going to college, are probably also working. But most of the jobs that students are doing whilst they're in college are not giving them tangible skills that are going to benefit them once they graduate. Nothing wrong with working in restaurants, nothing wrong with retail or fast food. But you're going to learn some skills, but not as many as you potentially could be working in the federal work-study program. And the reason I say that is a lot of the jobs in the federal work-study program are going to be jobs on the college, potentially learning skills in the fields that you're ultimately wanting to go into. So therefore, at the end of the day, once you have that qualification, whether it's an associate's or bachelor's degree, you're also going to be moving on with some skills. So your resume is going to be looking good. It's not just, yes, I have the paper, but look, I also have this experience as well. That's reason number one. Reason number two is your supervisor, your boss, is fully aware that you're primarily a student. So every semester when you have to keep changing your schedule because your classes change and therefore your work schedule has to change, or each semester when it's midterms or finals, and you go to your supervisor and go, hey, I've got a final tomorrow. Can I not come into work today? I really need to study more. Your supervisor understands that you're primarily a student and the work-study program is an aside. The restaurant you're working for or the retail store you're working for, they don't care that you're already a student, also a student. They're like, no, you need to be coming to work. It's a busy season for us. We need you here. And the third reason I'm a big fan of the federal work-study program is the jobs are on campus. So you can literally have a class in the morning, work for a few hours on campus, and then maybe have an afternoon class before you need to figure out how you're going to get home. You're not having to try jumping on a bus, or you're not having to get in your car and drive on US Highway 19, which we know is a traffic jam, whatever time of day you get onto that road. So huge fan of the federal work-study program. If anybody is interested in it, please do reach out to me. Certainly I can talk more and give you a link to our application on our website. And I can probably help you find it on the USF one as well, because they probably have a very strong, in fact, I know they have a very strong work-study program over there as well. Any questions on the federal work-study program?
Actually, we have a question just on FAFSA in general.
No problem. Excellent.
We have a question. I did FAFSA for my daughter last November, and now she got accepted to USF to start in the summer, not fall. What should I do?
Well, when did you do this FAFSA again? Sorry, that was in November or September?
It was in November. So
okay.
It sounds like she had done it for the 22-23 school year.
It might have been the 22-23, but it might have been the 21-22. So what you probably want to do is check to see which one you did, because at that point in November of 2021, both the 2021 and the 2022 were both available. So if you did the 2022, no problem. But if you didn't do the 21-22, definitely do it. But at this point, if you're looking at starting in the summer, you probably want to reach out to USF, make sure they got it, and see what she's potentially eligible for the summer, is what you would want to do. But make sure you did the right one, because yeah, at that point, you may have done the one that doesn't come into effect until fall of this year rather than of summer. And it's not too late if you haven't done the right one. That's not a problem. Hopefully that answered your question.
And I just want to add that feel free to go to USF. You can go to the St. Petersburg campus and talk with our financial aid folks, and they can just verify exactly which one you did and which one you may need to do. Thanks.
Excellent, excellent. Yep. So everything I've spoken about so far is the type of financial aid that I recommend to students, because I don't want you to become part of the statistics in America right now. So I'm going to give you a couple of statistics. Right now, there are over 1 million people with over $100,000 in federal student loan debt. The average student loan debt in America right now is well over $30,000. So you don't want to be starting your careers, if possible, with some sort of debt between 30 and 100,000 plus. And a lot of students do, because they don't realize it's not so easy to pay back these student loans. And I know a lot of people are like, Congress is constantly talking about loan forgiveness. They've been talking about federal student loan forgiveness for the last 30 years. It's a great election tally to talk about it. But then, unfortunately, once they get in power, unless we finally get a Congress that controls the House and the Senate, it's unlikely to pass. And it's very rare that we have a House and Senate both on one side that wants to pass it. So don't trust in the fact that I can take whatever I want in loans because they're going to get forgiven down the road. There is really only one type of realistic federal loan forgiveness program that does exist. It's the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. And that's a program whereby after you graduate from college, if you work for 10 years in a public service job, in a nonprofit job, paying on some sort of approved payment plan for 10 years, after 10 years on that plan, they will then forgive the remaining balance on your loan. Now, with that being said, that program came into effect about 12 years ago. So a couple of years ago, the first cohort of students that thought that they had successfully done what they needed to do for 10 years were now going to get the balances of their loans written off. So when people submitted those applications, and there were over 100,000 people that applied, I think there was under 1,000 people that got approved. Everyone else was told, no, one of your years you were in the wrong payment plan, or one of your years you were not in the right type of a job. Now they are re-looking at that because there was a lot of people that were denied that should not have been denied. So hopefully that is going to get fixed. But I don't want people putting hopes on any type of forgiveness plan, because our government changes. And when our government changes, they can change these programs. And as they are things that you're going to have to do after you graduate and potentially for 10 years, you don't know who's going to be in power and what kind of policy is going to be in place at that point. So that's why whenever people go, I'm just going to take whatever I want in loans because I'm going to get them all forgiven. Don't ever think that, please, because you don't know if those policies are going to be in place down the road. They're certainly currently not in place, only, as I say, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness one, and it's a bit of a disaster currently. So, bottom line, not trying to be all doom and gloom, just trying to warn you about these types of things. But when it comes to federal student loans, I definitely encourage students to avoid loans if possible. If, however, you can't avoid them and you do need to take them, definitely limit what you borrow. There are basically 3 types of loans available. There are subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans, so as federal loans, there are 3 types: subsidized, unsubsidized, and parent plus loans. Subsidized and unsubsidized loans are loans in the students' names. Plus loans are actually called parent plus loans, and those are loans in a parent's name. Now, the subsidized loan is definitely the better of the loans for the student, because the subsidized loan, the government pays the interest whilst you are in school. The unsubsidized loan, however, would be accruing interest all along. So that's why I always recommend to students, if we're offering you loans, if a school is offering you loans, a subsidized and an unsubsidized, if the subsidized loan is enough, just take the subsidized. Don't dip into the unsubsidized portion as well. When it comes to the interest rates on these loans, they are relatively low. Unfortunately, I'm not sitting at my desk, so I don't have the interest rates right in front of me. but for the 21-22 year, I think the interest rate on the subsidized loan is right around just below 3%. The Parent Plus loan interest rate, though, is a little bit higher. It's more like 6 or 7%. Don't quote me on that, but I can definitely find those rates and post those in chat once I finish presenting. But they do change every year. However, whatever interest rate you get on that loan for that year is a fixed interest rate. So if you take a $5,000 loan this year, then you get it at that 3%, and it will always be 3%. But then if you get a loan in the 22-23 year, and the interest rate at that point is 4%, that loan will be 4%. And chances are, as obviously Congress is talking about putting up interest rates now, as we see them starting to tighten down on the economy right now to try to cut back on inflation, then as they do increase interest rates, that's going to tie in with the subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus loan rates, which have been historically low for years, obviously like all other commercial interest rates. If you do choose to take federal student loans, you do have to complete a couple of things. One is called loan entrance counseling, which basically just talks to you all about your rights and responsibilities as a borrower. And then you also have to do a master promissory note, which is just your contract with the government stating you understand you have borrowed a loan and you know you have to pay it back. Talking about paying it back, even if you don't graduate, you still have to pay back that loan. And what's typically going to happen is 6 months after you finish going to school, your lender is going to put you in what's called a standard repayment plan. Standard repayment plan will simply take the total amount of loans that you've borrowed and spread them out over a straight 10-year repayment plan, is how that works. There are other plans available. They do have income-based plans, and they do have extended plans that you can be paying out over 20 years, but typically they're going to set you up on a standard repayment plan. Any other questions on loans before I tell you how old you're going to be by the time you repay them if you're not careful? And that's our little financial aid humor right there. But any other loan questions or any other questions, period?
No, I don't see anything posted as yet.
Well, that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to say. I did want to put, I thought I had my information on here. So let me put 3 things into chat then. Let me go over to wherever this PowerPoint presentation is. Oh, sorry, where this is. Where is chat on here? Chat, because I did want to put in interest rates, but I need to find those for you. So let me go to, you can still see my screen, right?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Good. So federal interest rates, 21-22. So yeah, the subsidized and unsubsidized interest rate is 3.73, and the plus loan interest rate for this year is 6.28. But as I suspect, that may be going up, but at least you've got those. Other thing I wanted to look at was, what is USF school code? USF OPEID. You're going to have it right here. There it is. I don't know if you guys can read that. My eyesight is not that good, but it is 00153-700. That seems like it's got an extra number. Let me go somewhere else. I'm not trusting that site. I mean, it may be right, but it just doesn't. It seems like it's got an extra number.
Yeah, William, I did look it up. I think it's 001537.
Okay.
And then
excellent.
forget the extra zeros.
Oh, I just had 1 extra 0 on that site I was looking at. I was like, that didn't seem right. Okay. So this number is good, bar the first 0. 015370. Is that what you said?
No, it's actually 20001537.
Oh, not the last 2 zeros. Okay. Interesting. All right. And I think there was a third thing I was going to mention, look up, tell you, but maybe I don't remember that now. Was there a third thing I was going to post, or at least check? Oh, my contact information. That's what I was going to let you know. So let me just put that in chat. So you all have my information if you want to reach out. My email address is scott.will spcollege.edu. And my telephone number is 727-341-7942. That way you've got that all in there.
Well, thank you so much. I want to give, I guess, a few more seconds if anybody else has any questions about financial aid. But I also want to thank you, Will, for taking some time out of your evening to come and talk to us about all the important things that go into FAFSA and understanding financial aid. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem, no problem.
Okay, well, if there are no more additional questions, I'm now going to turn it over to Brooke Payer. Brooke is with Pinellas County Schools and is going to talk with us about where we can find scholarship information and opportunities.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Yes, as was said, I am Brooke Payer. I'm a financial aid counselor with Pinellas County School District. And my presentation tonight, I'm going to go over some basics about where, especially in Pinellas County, you can find information regarding scholarships. And then I'm going to talk to you specifically about the requirements for Bright Futures. We'll go over the different levels and the criteria there. So I'll go ahead and get started. So where to find financial aid resources? We have tried to make the Pinellas County website kind of a one-stop shop for you to find financial aid information. So if you go to pcsb.org/financial aid, it's going to take you directly to our financial aid page. And on that page, you're going to find several links and postings. You'll see scholarship opportunities, which is our listing of current scholarships available. You'll find Bright Futures information. That includes a link to the Bright Futures website, as well as information about the community service process here in Pinellas County. I have links to the Pinellas Education Foundation. I'll talk to you a little bit in a minute about their opportunities. We have links to the FAFSA, and then we have scholarship search engines. I think Will mentioned those earlier, that you can search for scholarships. So this just to give you an idea of what the website looks like. At the top is where that scholarship opportunities is listed. And then there are some videos available. So pretty much the presentation that I'm doing tonight is going to be covered in these different videos that are available. So I have one that's just basically on where to find scholarships. I have one that goes over the Bright Futures information, and then I have one that goes over FAFSA information. So this is what our scholarship opportunities listing page looks like. So if you open up that link, it's going to take you to this document, and this gets updated on a regular basis. In fact, I just updated it, I believe Monday or Tuesday this week. So, and what it is, it's going to give you any kind of scholarship that I'm made aware of, whether it's a local scholarship, it might be a national, might be a state scholarship. I will list here, and you'll see the name of the scholarship. You'll see the award amount if we know, the grade level, kind of a general synopsis of what the requirements are, as well as either a link to the website if it's an online application, or it will be, it'll inform students to check with their school counseling department for a copy if it's a paper copy. And I cut off that last line, but that is the deadline, which of course is very important. You want to make sure that you're meeting the deadlines. And if a scholarship is new to the listing, so if it's posted for the first time for that year, then it will say new after it. So it's kind of a nice way for students, if they're looking on a regular basis, you can just kind of quickly look on and look for the new scholarship, see if there's anything new that's posted since you've last looked. So like I said, that gets updated depending on the time of the year. This time of year, it's pretty, it's updated quite a bit, and it will continue in the spring. We get a lot of local scholarships in the spring. And I also want to point out that you can see hopefully you can see, I can barely see it, but that first scholarship that was posted was 9 through 12. So a lot of times students think they don't apply for scholarships till senior year. And although it's true that a lot of scholarships you don't apply for senior year, there are some that are available for underclassmen. So it's never too early to start checking to see about that. Another place that this posting it goes is into Naviance. Naviance is a new platform that we have in Pinellas County. We've had for the last couple of years that students can get college and career information. So students log into Naviance via Clever. So they go to their Clever, and there's a Naviance app, so they can click on that and it will automatically log them in. And among other resources, there is a scholarship listing. The listing that I put, all the scholarships that I put on my listing, I also put here. And there's also additional scholarships that Naviance has found, like different national scholarships and so forth. And in addition to just being able to look for these, students can also monitor and track what scholarships they've applied to. So they're able to do that to kind of keep track of what they've applied to, if they've received anything like that. So Pinellas Education Foundation, I have the website here, but again, it is linked to our page. So if you go to the PCSB financial aid page, you can go direct, there'll be a direct link to Pinellas Ed there. But they have several different scholarship programs. They have the Take Stock in Children. And they also have the Walker's Rising Stars. Take Stock in Children is one that students can sign up as early as middle school through 9th grade. So again, that's one of those that I say, it's not just senior year, that's certainly one of them. The Pinellas Education Foundation Traditional High School Senior Scholarship, though, is really the big one that they offer. And what I like about it is it's one application and one essay, and students are considered for over 100 different scholarships. So they have one application and a lot of different scholarships. If you go to the website, you'll be able to pull up the listing and see before you do the application what is available. And the other thing I like about it is it's only Pinellas County. So it's not one that you're going to be competing against people across the country. It's just specifically for Pinellas. And the final thing is the criteria varies widely. So it's not, sometimes students think, oh, scholarships are only for that student that's in the top 10% of their class. These are scholarships that have a vast array of criteria. Some are for students that are involved in music and dance, drama, those kind of things. Some are math and science, some are sports related. A lot of them are specific for specific schools. So there's different donors that put these scholarships or pay for these scholarships, and they might be a graduate from Tarpon Springs High School. So it's for someone from that school. That application opens in the fall in September, and it closes at the end of January. So if there's any seniors on here, it will be closing on Monday. And I would recommend all seniors in Pinellas County complete this. Every year we find, we talk to the people that help put this together, and they're always like, we just didn't have that many applications for this particular scholarship. Because like I said, they have different criteria. So I really would recommend all seniors take advantage of this opportunity. Another one I want to mention is the Big Future Scholarships. Now this one is not new, but it has had a name change. So you may have heard of it previously called the College Board Opportunity Scholarship. It came out, I think, about 4 or 5 years ago. They have just changed for this year's junior class to Big Future Scholarships. So if you're a current senior, you're still on that track with the College Board Opportunity Scholarships. If you're applying, you're still at that place. But for students that are juniors and underclassmen, they will start with the Big Future Scholarships. It is open to all students, regardless of GPA, test scores, and family income. And what it is essentially is that students are rewarded for taking steps that will help them prepare for college. So it has a couple benefits. You might win some money, and you're also, but even if you don't, you're doing steps that are going to help you get ready for college. So, for example, the first step, which opened for juniors in December, and so it's still open, is for students to save colleges. So they go to the Big Future website, and I think it saves 6 colleges to their account. 6 colleges are considering, and that automatically, if they have their account and everything, will set them up to be entered in these monthly drawings. And the monthly drawings are for $500, and there are, I think they said 2 a month of $40,000. So that's a change from the old program. With the other program, if you did all of the steps, you could be entered into a drawing for a $40,000 scholarship. But this one, you don't have to do all steps. Each step, there will be students that will earn the $40,000 scholarship. And from previous experience, we've had numerous students in Pinellas County win scholarships. Now, we haven't had any win the big one, but we have had, when it was the College Board opportunity, we've had students every year that have won different steps. So I really encourage students to do this. Like I said, it's obviously the opportunity to win scholarships.
Mother, and then changing my mind and wanted to go back to work. I 25-year-old female.
I think there's somebody's got their
my husband grew with his mother being
sound on. Are we there? Oops. Sorry, I don't see my screen right. Okay. So at any rate, it's the 2 benefits. You can win a drawing, but you're also doing things that are going to help you as you plan for college. Some other places to find scholarships, the colleges and universities that you're interested in. That's probably going to be the most common type. So when you are in your senior year and you start applying for colleges, you also want to find out how to apply for scholarships. For a lot of colleges, you're going to find that if you apply for admissions by a certain deadline, you're automatically going to be considered for their scholarships. But there are going to be other schools that might have a separate process for you where you have to do a separate application. So it's really important that students do that research for themselves, what the schools are interested in, and find out the process and find out the deadlines so that you don't miss any deadlines. But in addition to like the freshman scholarships that are common that you're just considered for when you apply, you also want to see if there's other scholarships available. So if you're going directly into a major, you might check and see if there's any scholarships in that major. Most colleges also have a foundation office that are going to offer additional scholarships. So you want to look and see, does my school have a foundation, and do they offer scholarships, and how do I apply? I know, for example, St. Pete College has a foundation office, and they offer a lot of scholarships for our freshman students. Another place to look are just like your outside scholarships. Those are like your local scholarships. That might be like the Rotary Club. I would recommend parents checking with employers to see if they perhaps offer scholarships. If the student themselves work, check their employer. Organizations, if you belong to any kind of religious organization, see if there's scholarships there. It's kind of a leave no stone unturned situation. And again, some of these local scholarships I'm also going to be posting on my scholarship opportunities. Like, for example, every spring I get the Gator Club of Pinellas County has a scholarship for students that are going to be going to UF, and so we'll post that. And there's a lot of things like that. State scholarships, that is, we'll talk about a little bit more on the next slides. That's ones, for example, like Bright Futures. And then national scholarships. These are ones that I'll also post if I have them. They're going to be more competitive, but they usually have a big price. They usually pay for a lot too. So scholarship search engines. So if you go to our website, at the bottom of the page, you will find a link that goes to some different scholarship search engines. Some examples are FastWeb we have on there. The College Board Big Futures, I kind of mentioned that earlier with the Big Futures, but you can also search for other scholarships on their website. And then there's Raise Me, which is a little bit different. It's where you sign up on an account and you can earn micro scholarships to specific schools. So it is one that it's not open for all schools. I think you have to set up an account to find out what schools specifically are affiliated with that you could earn them for, but that's another option. But essentially you're answering a lot of questions about yourself, and based on those answers, you're going to get matched up with these search engines. So the Florida State Scholarship and Grant Program. So if you go to the FloridaStudentFinancialAid.org website, you're going to find you can select state grants and scholarship programs, and you're going to find the listing of the 13 state scholarships and grant programs. You'll see the name of the program listed, and then you can click on it and you'll get a fact sheet for each program. You'll also find on this page a link to the Bright Future Student Handbook. So instead of just a one page, it's got a very comprehensive handbook because there's a lot to know when it comes to that. And there's also a link to the Florida Financial Aid application, which is required for Bright Futures, as well as some other state programs. So this is just a listing of those programs. So you will find this on the page. And again, if you click on each one, it's going to tell you more about it. I will point out the ones that have the asterisk after them. So like Bright Futures, Florida Farm Worker Student Scholarship, Rosewood Family, Jose Marte, and the scholarship for children and spouses of deceased and disabled veterans. Those all require the Florida Financial Aid application. So those fact sheets, as I mentioned, if you open those up, you're going to find out how do you apply, what's required. For some of them, the FAFSA is going to be required. As I mentioned, for some of them, the FFA is going to be required. Some of them will say you need both. And then some will also just direct you to the college to find out the process, because each college has their own process for that. But that's a really important to look at those and see if those are ones that you might apply for. But the big one in Florida is the Florida Bright Futures program. So I'm going to talk to you the rest of my presentation regarding that. It is awarded to every student in the state of Florida who meets the eligibility requirements. So in other words, unlike a scholarship that maybe they're giving out 5 scholarships, this is one that if you're eligible, you will get. There's not a set amount. It's every student in Florida that meets the criteria. It, as I mentioned, requires a Florida Financial Aid application. That application opens up October 1st. So students sign up for that senior year beginning October 1st. I recommend that you apply as soon as it opens. And it's a very easy application. It wouldn't take more than 10 minutes. And you just get it out of the way. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to meet the criteria when you apply, because we will be sending transcripts to Bright Futures 3 times a year. So we send transcripts at the beginning of the school year, usually September. Then we send them again after first semester. So we just submitted them in January. And then we will submit them again in the summer after graduation dates are posted and so forth. So each of those times, if you don't have your community service hours when you apply, but you get it done first semester and get it entered into our system, then they will be included when we send transcripts the next time. So again, the FloridaStudentFinancialAid.org is where you're going to go, and you're going to select state grant and scholarship applications. And that's where you're going to find the link to the Florida Financial Aid application. So there are 4 different award levels, and I'm going to go over the specific criteria for each, but there are some general criteria that we'll go over that apply for all of them. You need to be a Florida resident and a U.S. citizen or eligible non-citizen, and this is determined by the college that you're going to attend. You need to complete the FFA no later than August 31st after high school graduation. So as I mentioned, it's already open. For seniors, it will close on August 31st, 2022. So between now and then, students have to get that application completed. Even though it doesn't close till August 31st, that does not mean students have until that date to get their criteria done. I will go over specifics, but for the most part, students need to have everything completed by graduation. Students need to earn a Florida high school diploma or equivalent. They cannot be found guilty of a felony. They have to be accepted and enrolled in a degree or certificate program at an eligible Florida public or private institution. So in other words, this is a scholarship that can only be used in the state of Florida. And when we say that you have to be enrolled and accepted, that isn't, again, not when you apply, but before they're going to issue the money. They will issue, they won't be giving you money, it will go to the school. And so you have to have a school that in a Florida public or independent school to issue it to. Once you're in college, you need to be enrolled in at least 6 non-remedial credit hours. And if you're not funded immediately after high school graduation, you can apply within 5 years to get your award. So in other words, if you decide you're going out of state for college and you think, well, I don't need to do this because I'm going to Georgia for school. Well, you do have 5 years from graduation to activate this award. So I recommend that you still apply for it, even if you don't intend to use it, because you could, if eligible, then activate it. However, if you don't get that application done by the deadline, you will not be able to get your award. And you really don't want to do that, lose this opportunity just because you didn't take the 10 minutes to complete it. So the 2 top academic awards are the Florida Academic and the Florida Medallion. And they have very similar requirements, so we'll talk about those together. You need to complete specific high school coursework. You need to complete minimum GPA and test scores and community service hours. So specifically with the coursework, and this is, like I said, true for both the academic, which is the highest tier, and the medallion, you need 4 English credits, you need 4 math credits at level Algebra 1 and higher, you need 3 natural sciences, you need 3 social sciences, and you need 2 world language. This also aligns with the state university system admission requirements. So state universities are like your USF, FSU, those state universities, and they also say this is the minimum that you have to be admitted. So it does align with that. With the world language, I do like to point out it needs to be the same language. So they need to see a 2nd year or higher of a foreign language. You can't do like a year of Spanish 1 and French 1. They need that 2nd year or higher. In those specific courses that I mentioned, you have to get a specific GPA. For the Florida Academic, you need a 3.50 GPA in those specific courses. The medallion is a 3.0. That is a weighted GPA, a weighted unrounded GPA in those specific 16 courses. They do weight courses a quarter per semester for AP, pre-IB, IB honors, pre-ACE, ACE, and academic dual enrollment. So with that in mind, their GPA is not what you're going to see on your report card. So sometimes students, we go over this and they say, oh, I'm going to meet the requirements for the academic, but they're looking at their cumulative GPA that includes all their elective courses. They may still meet it, but there's also a chance that their GPA and their core courses could be different. It could be higher, it could be lower. So you really need to know what your Bright Futures GPA is to see how you're doing. And I'll talk about that towards the end about how you can find that out. College entrance exams. So currently, Bright Futures has only announced the criteria for current seniors and juniors. So next summer, they will likely tell us what the requirement is for the class of 2024. But for both juniors and seniors, they have the same requirements. For the academic, you need either a 29 ACT composite or a 1330 on the SAT. For the medallion, it's a 25 ACT or a 1210 SAT. The ACT is the average across 4 subject areas. So they look at your English, math, reading, and science. They add those together and divide it by 4 to get your composite. If your composite score ends in 0.5 or higher, they will round up. So if your composite is 24.5, that rounds up to a 25. The SAT is just adding your critical reading and your math score together. These tests can be taken an unlimited amount of times through June 30th of the student's graduation year. This is the only thing that students can complete after graduation. Everything else has to be done by the last date the student graduates. So if a student graduates early, they have to meet all their criteria early, with this exception. So they can test through June 30th. If a student is a mid-year grad, which means that they graduate mid-year and are planning on starting school in the spring, then they have through January 31st to get their test scores. A final note is they do super score. So if you take the SAT multiple times or you take the ACT multiple times, they will take your best scores on each of the different subject areas to give you a super score. And finally, they only will evaluate students with official test scores. For Bright Futures to get your official test scores, they get them from the Florida Department of Education's test repository. To ensure that your scores get sent to the repository, when you take an SAT or ACT, you need to list a Florida university, public university, to receive your scores. So when you sign up to take an SAT or ACT, it will ask, do you want to send your scores anywhere? And I recommend you send it to at least one Florida university, public university, so that they will go to Bright Futures. Otherwise, you will have to do that at some point later on to get the scores there. And it will, especially if it's not until the end of the year, during the summer, it could delay you getting your Bright Futures. So my recommendation is, if you're getting ready to sign up, just make sure and list a school. If you haven't done so, and you've taken scores and they meet their criteria, then you'll need to go back and add a school at College Board or ACT to get the scores to them. Community service hours. The academic requires 100 community service hours, so that's 100 total, and the medallion is 75. Again, those have to be done by graduation. Students can start as early as the summer before 9th grade because they are considered high school students at that time. And if you go to our website, there is a link to the Bright Futures Community Service for Pinellas County. On that page, you're going to find out the process for Bright Futures Community Service in Pinellas County. You're going to find links to the forms that have to be completed, because we do have like a proposal form that students have to do for each location and get it approved at their school. And it also has a link of potential agencies. So if you're a student and you don't know where you want to do your hours, you can go there and you can look at a list of agencies, and it will tell you, there's an information sheet that will tell you about each one, what you would do, how many hours you get, and so forth. And that's a good place to start if you just don't know. I will point out, you do not have to choose any location that's on that list. This is not a comprehensive list. It's not a pre-approved list. It's just a list of potential places. So if you have a place and it's not on that list, but you do the proposal form and get it approved, that's okay. These are just potential places. There's some other ways to qualify. So if you are a National Merit Finalist and Scholar, a National Hispanic Scholar, you get the ACE diploma or you get the IB diploma, and you meet your test score requirements. It's not the test score requirements, the community service requirements, then you automatically will get either the academic, if you have the 100 hours, or 75 hours, you'll get the medallion. So you don't have to meet the test score requirements or anything. That's automatic. If you finish the ACE curriculum but don't get the diploma, and the same thing for IB, then you do still need to meet the test score requirement. But if you get the curriculum done for either of those, get the test scores and the community service hours, you will also be eligible. The Florida Gold Seal Vocational Scholarship is one of the 2 vocational scholarships that are offered. Sometimes these students are not as familiar with. So we always talk, and I think are most familiar with the medallion and the academic, but there are 2 vocational. For the Gold Seal, students need to have a 3.0 GPA in their non-elective high school courses. Non-elective high school courses is just another way of saying your graduation requirements. Students need to take at least 3 credits in a single career and technology education program and get a 3.5 GPA in that program. So the high schools have a lot of different career and technical education programs. So it might be computers, like if you're taking a set of different computer classes. It might be like if you're in a medical magnet program, all those different career and technology. It just needs to be a program though. So it can't be that you just take a random class here or there. You need to be in a set program. And you need the 3.5 in that program. You also need 30 hours of community service, and you do have a test score requirement that's on the next page. So with this one, instead of just the ACT and SAT, you can also earn your scores on the PERT test. And you can see that they are looking at specific scores in each different subtest. So ACT, they're looking at a 19 reading, 17 English, 19 math. If you do the SAT, they're looking at their subcategories. So there's some subcategories in there, and they're looking at the reading test with a 24, writing and language with a 25, and math 24. And finally, the PERT, they're looking at a reading score of 106, a writing score of 103, or a math score of 114. There are some restrictions with the vocational scholarships. The Gold Seal can only be used at a post-secondary institution that offers an applied technology diploma, technical degree education program, such as an Associate of Science or an Associate of Applied Science, or a career certificate program. So what that means is that you cannot use it for a bachelor's degree. You are going to have to go to a school that offers some sort of associate's degree or certificate program. St. Pete College, for example, offers some of these programs. So if you're going to St. Pete and you get this, you would want to check with their financial aid office to see if you're in a program that you can use it. So it's not, you can't use it for all programs at St. Pete, but a lot of them, it is available. And the final Bright Future Scholarship is the Gold Seal CAPE Scholarship. And this one's pretty simple. You need a minimum of 5 post-secondary credit hours through a CAPE industry certification that articulates to college credit, and you need to complete at least 30 community service hours. So when students take a lot of our CTE programs, there are industry certifications that they will test for and can earn. So if the student is able to test and earn 5 post-secondary hours in a CAPE industry certification through those, then they can be eligible for this scholarship. Like the Gold Seal, it also has that limitation about only being able to be used for an institution that offers like the associate's degree or certificate programs. Now, one different thing is that if the student completes, gets the Gold Seal and CAPE and completes their associate's degree, they can then use this towards a 60 hours towards a baccalaureate degree or a bachelor's degree. So they can continue to use that if they meet the renewal requirements. Award amounts, so that's always important. The Florida academic is 100% tuition and fees at a public institution. The medallion is 75% tuition and fees at a public, and the Gold Seal programs, the CAPE and the Gold Seal vocational, are a per credit hour amount, and it depends on the institution type, the award level, and credit type. But no, it's about $39 to $48 per semester. If you are going to a non-public institution, you will get a comparable amount. So you won't get 100% tuition and fees at a public like University of Tampa, but you'll get an amount that's equivalent to what it would be at a public. Something new for the fall of this year is students that earn the Florida Medallion, that second tier, if they go and enroll in an associate's degree program at a Florida College Institute, such as St. Pete College as an example, they will get 100% of tuition and fees while in that institution. And then once they get their associate, they can use it towards a bachelor's degree at that 75% level. But in other words, they can use it for 2 years at a Florida college system school, get their associate's degree, and have that 100% tuition and fees. So I mentioned earlier that your GPA is not the same as what's on your report card. And to help you find out what that is we do print out Bright Futures evaluations for our juniors and seniors. And we did that this fall, late fall. So if you're a junior and senior, hopefully you've already gotten your Bright Futures evaluation if you're a Pinellas County student. It should be true whether you're Pinellas or not, but we definitely have, because I helped get those distributed. I know some schools are still working on it because they've asked me about sending an application or an evaluation for students that maybe they didn't get. But you will get a copy of your Bright Futures evaluation, and on that it will tell you what you're missing, it will tell you what your GPA is, and so forth. So that is one way you can track that. So I really think students, when you get that, don't just go, oh, I don't know what this is. Be sure to look at it and understand it. And if you don't understand it, talk with your school counselor. I'm going to give you my contact information. You can also call me if you have questions. So this is my information. You can see my email and phone number. And, you know, any questions you have, I'm more than happy to answer. And if you have any questions now, I'm willing to answer too. Anybody have any?
So far, there are no questions in the chat. The only question I have, and it was just because of my experience today with a student, is the Gold Seal scholarship, can that be used at like Pinellas Technical College or a vocational school?
Yes, I believe it depends. It's not going to be for every single program, but you would be able to check and see if they offer like the certification programs that would count. So I would check with the school, but yes, some of the vocational and like Pinellas Technical you will be able to use that for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I know it's a lot of information, so I'm going to assume that you're just processing that, but you know, it is something that just to get a good understanding or even a basic understanding of what it is, that would be my takeaway. If you don't remember what the test scores are exactly, but you do remember there are test scores and you do remember there is an application, those are really important things. A lot of times I have students who I talk to and they say, oh yeah, no, I did the application. I turned it into my counselor. And I'm like, I think you're talking about the community service application, the proposal form, and that is not the application that's required. So some of those things are just important to kind of keep in mind, especially if you're an underclassman and not quite ready to be applying and everything, but just to keep those things in mind.
I agree. It really is a lot of information, but knowing that like you're here to reach out to, and again, her contact information, Brooke's contact information is on the screen. And like William is there. It's really, really helpful just to know that there are resources that you can tap into if you have any questions.
Definitely.
Thanks. Danica, we'll hand it over to you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen and tell you a little bit about PATH and why we do what we do. So just give me 1 second. So as I mentioned earlier, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we are part of the PATH program, or the Pinellas Access to Higher Education program at the University of South Florida St. Petersburg campus, and we work in conjunction with St. Petersburg College. So the purpose of PATH is to provide equitable, flexible, and attainable pathways to promote higher education for all students in Pinellas County. And we do this because we want to increase the number of students who are attaining post-secondary degrees and other credentials in Pinellas County so that we can create avenues for economic mobility for students, fill skill gaps, meet workforce needs, and then improve the overall health of Pinellas County. And so we work to do that by being a resource to all the students in Pinellas County, whether they are Pinellas County school students or if they're private school students or homeschool students. So we try to provide college access information regardless of their intended college. So even if you plan to go to another school that is not USF or SPC, we still want to be able to assist you in getting to that school of your choice. We do that by offering individual counseling sessions or I guess consulting sessions. We also volunteer at the Pinellas County schools, college and career centers. You may see us if you have one of those schools. So Largo, Gibbs, and a lot of other ones. I think there are about 9 in the county. Those places also provide college access information as well through their college and career center managers. In addition to that, we do offer a 2+2 program. It's for students who want to specifically start at SPC and then receive support in college success workshops. We offer 2 scholarships for students who may be transferring to USF St. Petersburg campus, and then we'll be offering a book scholarship to PATH students in the future. So to wrap all that up, basically we assist students while they're in high school to get to the college of their choice. And then for our college students who want assistance, if they want to start at SPC and then transfer to USF St. Petersburg campus, we help them through their journey from start to bachelor's degree graduation. So if you want to get in contact with PATH, this is our information. We do have a website. It is www.stpetersburg.usf.edu/PATH. We are on Facebook as well as Instagram. I didn't have it listed here, but in addition to the individual email addresses, we also have a general PATH email, which is stp-path@usf.edu. But if you have any questions about the things that we'll discuss, the things that Brooke discussed, or any general college information questions, we are here to assist and make sure that those questions get answered for you. So that pretty much wraps up our workshop for this evening. We thank you for taking the time to spend this evening with us. And we do ask that you take a survey. It lets us know how we did, what we can improve, if there are any additional things you'd like to see from the PATH program. I'm going to leave this QR code up for a few more seconds, but I'm also going to put it in the chat. And so, as I mentioned earlier at the start of this workshop, we are going to be emailing out the video. Give me a few days because we'd like to get it posted to YouTube, and that may take a bit of time. But once you get it, it'll be an email with the video as well as any of the links or resources that were mentioned today. So we want to make sure that, like we mentioned, it's a lot of information to take in, so that you don't have to just digest it today. You can come back to it later, think about it, and you will also have access to Brooke's contact information as well as Will Scott's if you need to get any more questions answered by those individuals. But that officially concludes our workshop for today. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to still ask them. I think you can stop recording, Sandy.